All right, welcome back to our Firebase demo, authentication demo. Our current application looks like this. We have our home, we have our show all users, which we can only see on the front end if we are logged in, and we have our log out button, which we can only see if we are logged in as well. We can try to go to our sign up page, but it won't allow us because we are logged in. And when we log out, we can't see our user page. It directs us right back to our login page. And so I can say test@test.com as well as test. And I can log in again. So this is getting pretty close to where our goal was for today. However, we're still missing the ability to use authentication on the back end. Now, why is that important? Well, because although we have to be signed in to see it, our users here, I could log out, and even though on the front end I'm not allowed to see this, I can still very easily make a request to our backend just by hitting the server and see that information that I didn't want that should be secured. This is special information. So our next task is to update our application in a way to protect our backend. So only signed in users can have it. So we're going to have to add that token that we had earlier and pass that in and deal with that in the backend. So let's go ahead and get started. So to start off, I am going to go to our backend. And I'm going to make a Firebase folder back here, right in the root. So just backend, I'm going to create a new file, and I'm going to call this Firebase, Firebase.js. So very similar to the way the front end one was handled. But in here, and inside of here, I am going to need to have Firebase admin. So that's another package I have to install. So I'm just going to open up a new terminal page. I'm going to cd into my backend, and I'm going to npm install Firebase-admin. And then I'm going to start here. So I'm going to say const admin. I'm going to require our Firebase admin. And I'm also going to require .env so that I can read environment variables like so. And now I have to do a couple things. First thing I'm going to do is go into my project in Firebase and get some information for us to generate things. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to go to our Firebase auth demo page. I am going to go to settings, project settings. I'm going to go to service accounts. And from here, I'm going to generate a new private key. And there we go. That's going to download into your computer. I am going to want these lines as well. So I'm going to save that. And I'm going to add that line into our code here. Oops. And I'm going to build a service account object. So I'm going to say const service account. And this is going to read all of these keys that I'm going to have in my environment. So I'm going to have a type pointing to my process env type, my project ID, my private key ID. I'm going to have a private key where I'm going to replace. This allows me to get through those new lines, as well as our client email, client ID, auth, URI, token URI, auth provider x509 cert URL, and our client x509 cert URL. And those are all going to get passed in. So I'm going to save this, and I'm going to update our backend environment to have these keys, which I will be taking directly from the from this file that just downloaded. Okay, so transfer all of those keys over, and I will see you back here in just a second. Okay, so after you've transferred all those keys, you should be good to go. So now that we've done that, our next step is to add some middleware into our code to make sure that we are passing all the correct things. Okay, so I'm going to close everything so I can start clean. And I'm going to go into my backend, and I'm going to create my new folder, and I'm going to call this middleware. And inside of here, I'm going to create a new file called auth.js. Now, my auth.js is going to require that admin that we just looked at. So const admin require / firebase. And now we're going to create a middleware function that's going to make sure that we have a token. So we can say const check firebase token. And this is middleware. So this is going to take in a request, a response, and a next. And we're going to throw in a try catch. Oops. And here we can go ahead and take our token that we're going to get out of our request.headers.auth token. Okay, and then we want to decode that token. So const decoded token. And that's going to be our await. And we can say admin.auth.verify ID token. And we'll pass in our token. Great. And then I'm going to take the ID from this. So we can say const, this is a UID from our decoded token dot UID. And I can decide what I want to do with it. So I want to put my current user's ID on the request, just because that seems like a nice place for me to access it. So I'm going to say, go ahead and say request dot, and I'm going to call this user ID. I'm going to add this property and assign that to UID. So that way, if I am making a call that requires me to look at that specific ID, like I want to get all of a specific user's items or something, I can go ahead and grab that ID from our request.userID. And then I'm going to call next to continue on to the next function. Now, if there is an error, I'm just going to throw a console log for me. That would tell us that the code broke and is going to project my error. But for our feedback for our user, I'm going to say res.status. I'm going to give it a 401, so it's an unauthorized status, and send back the JSON with a message. It's going to say no authenticated user. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and export this. So module.exports, and I'm going to say check firebase token. I'm going to save that. And now I have some middleware. So the next step for me to do is to actually add this into the protected routes I want. So we only have one API call that we want to be completely protected, and that is coming from our fetch all users. We only want people who are completely logged in to be able to see fetch all users. So I'm going to add that middleware here. So let's go ahead and take it out. So we will take check firebase, firebase token, and that will be come from our / middleware / auth, and I can just go ahead and add that right between those two calls. So now with this change, and let me just make sure everything's running well in the back end. So with this change, when I go to our API and I refresh, right, I now see no authenticated user. Okay, cool. How about in our app? Let's go ahead and log in at test.com, test, and I go to see all users, but it breaks. I get a status 401 because I'm not currently passing in that token. So we have to go update our code in the front end to pass in that token. So let's go ahead and do that. So we are making that call inside of our users index right here. And so let's go ahead and make a little update. The first thing I want is I want to use context in order to get that token that I'm passing around in our provider. If you remember, we're passing our current user and our token. So I'm going to go ahead and get that token out of our context. So let's go ahead and import use context, as well as let's import our auth context. Okay. And let's take out the token. So say token, and we're going to be getting that from use context of auth context. Okay. And then we are going to add in a headers into this. So I'm going to throw in headers. And headers is an object that has, I'm going to say auth token. And I'm going to have that point to our token. I'm going to save that. I'm going to see if there's any errors. Okay. And let's see where it happens. So I see token is not defined. Okay. Is that still the case? Okay, so token is not defined. So let's start to figure this error out. So this is coming from lines 34. And I misspelled. I called it token. Okay, so I'm going to save that. Check now. Refresh. And we're still getting an unauthorized. And it looks like our backend is telling us some more. It's saying admin.auth is not a function. So that's interesting because I thought it was. So let's go take a look at what's going on. So we will go to our front end, back end. And we see that we are requiring admin, and we're saying admin.auth, and this is where it's complaining. Now, I'm wondering if maybe we didn't export it correctly, and we didn't. So we're going to just go ahead and module.exports admin. And I think that might make things work a little bit better for us. So I'm going to go ahead and close that and try again. I'll refresh. And now we're seeing users. And over here, when we try to ping it, we don't see users. So now we have authentication on the back end, which is very cool. Great. Let's go ahead and continue this and try to see the steps that we would have to take to actually host this as a full stack application now. So the first things I'm going to do is I'm going to host my backend for this project on Heroku, and I'm going to host my front end on Netlify. So let's start that process. All right. So first thing you need to do is to make sure you have Heroku installed. So I'm going to say which Heroku to make sure, and I do have my Heroku installed, so I know I'm in a good position. And then I'm going to create a new Heroku project. So I'm going to say Heroku, create, and the name of my project. So I'm going to call this Firebase Auth Demo. And this is going to, it wants me to delete some apps because I've already reached my limit. So hang tight, I will be right back. Okay, I've gone ahead and deleted some projects, so I'm going to try again. And so, okay, now that should create a new branch. So I'm just going to check. I'm going to say get remote. And I see that it did automatically add that. Otherwise, I would add that myself. Okay, great. And now let's go ahead and create a Postgres database. Postgres database. So I don't know what's wrong with my talking today. So I'm going to say Heroku add-ons, create Heroku PostgreSQL hobby dev, and that should create my new database. Great. And that's going to give me a database URL and everything. Now we need to update our project in Heroku and add all of those things from our env. So all of our type, project ID, private key, and all of that, we have to add that as backend environment variables for our Heroku. So let's go to Heroku. And let's see where we can do something like that. So this is our new project, Firebase Auth Demo. We can go to, I believe, settings, reveal the config var, and we can go ahead and add variables here. So go ahead and add all of these variables from your environment folder file, okay? And I will see you in just a moment. Okay, so once you've added all of those environment variables into Heroku, it's just time to make a couple more changes, and then we'll be completely ready to host. So in our package JSON, I want to add a start script that's just going to run node at app.js. Okay. And in addition to that, I'm going to actually run my SQL file for Heroku. So I want to do that before I forget. I just want to make sure that I have commented out those other things. Okay, it looks like I have. So the command to run the SQL is going to be Heroku pgpsql -f, and then the relative path. So this is going to be my backend, my DB, and my schema.sql. And this has created my table in my database. And since I do have this front and back end set up, I'm going to go to my very root, and I'm going to add a package JSON here. So I'm going to say npm init -y just to get everything there. And I'm going to go into that, and I'm going to add a start script for that as well. So start, and this script is going to go that I want to cd into the backend. And then I want to npm install, and then npm start. And that should be good. I'm not sure why the coloring is off, but we will see. Oh, I think it's because I have my quote in the wrong spot. There we go. Okay, so after you've done all this, it's safe to go ahead and say, oh, let's go ahead and do git status. We've made a lot of changes. Git status, git commit, and we'll say backend auth, and prepare for Heroku. Okay, and let's go ahead and git push Heroku master. And this is going to take a little bit of time as it compiles everything and starts up a server that will be run on Heroku. Looks like it's already done though. So let's go ahead and see. It says it's deployed on this URL. So let's go check this out. Let's see. I think it's just taking a second. It says we cannot get, but that's because we didn't put any route there. But we do have one for API/users, and this should say no authenticated user. Great. I'm going to go ahead and guess that the other one works as well. So now I have a URL for our Heroku project. So something I have to do now is update my utility in my API URL. So when we're using localhost, I want to use this as the API for the backend. But if we are using on our production site there, I want us to hit Heroku. Make sure not to have that slash. Great. And now we can host the front end. So I'm going to cd into our front end. I'm going to say npm run build. There is one minor thing I think I probably haven't done yet, but we'll see. Okay, so while this is running, we'll just wait for a minute. Great. So it's all running. So now let's go ahead and try to deploy this. So I'm going to run netlify deploy. It's going to ask me what I want to do. I can control this with my arrow keys. I'm just going to create and configure a new site. I'm not going to make, well, sure, I'll make a firebase auth demo Okay. Oh, it already exists. Great. Firebase, auth, demo. I'm gonna just put my birthday, 03 04 1990. Hopefully that hasn't been done yet. Great. And so let's say we want to do the build. That's the file that I want to host. So it's just going to take a quick second and we can look at the live draft. So option click. I do want to open. And we see the site and where we have no users. I'm going to go ahead and sign up. So we should have a fresh database. So that's why I'm going to sign up random. So I'm going to call this bunny@bunny.com. Bunny. I will sign up. Don't need to save. And I am signed in. I'm not, oh, there it is. I'm not sure why that took a second. Interesting. Well, let's do the refresh. So there we go. So this is an issue, right? Is when we host on Netlify, it breaks if we're on anything other than just our root slash, because right now I'm on /users. So there's a pretty easy fix for this. So let's just quickly do that. So inside of my public of my front end, I'm going to create a new file. And I'm going to call this underscore redirects. And inside of here, I'm just going to say /index.html, which is saying I want to go back to this page 200. I'm going to save that. And now I'm going to run my build again. So npm run build. And we can wait for that for a second. Great. And now that that's done, let's go ahead and try Netlify deploy again. And I want to deploy our build. And this is pretty quick. And let's go ahead and open up this draft. So now when we go to all users, well, we're still not signed in. So let's go ahead and sign in at bunny.com. Bunny. No thanks. This is our home component. And I will go to show all users. And we see bunny@bunny. And when I go to refresh, we'll see that it keeps me there and it doesn't break. Let's go ahead and log out and sign in with one more user. So let's go ahead and say bugs@bugs.com, and bugs' password will be password. We can log in. Oh, well, that's because, great. So we got an error message. We need to have a sign up first. So let's go ahead and say bugs@bugs.com. And we will say password and we'll sign up. Okay, we'll get routed over to our home component. Let's go ahead and see all the users. And now we have bunny@bunny and bugs, and we have a fully hosted full stack application. And you'll see that in our React app, right, we still just have query, and test. So we are using two different databases, one on Heroku when we're hosted, and one on localhost when we're local. Great. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.